Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jim Barton. I was a class of '85 here at MUS, a former player, basketball player, and student of Coach Peters. We're here for a great event. As you all already know, the ceremony to celebrate Coach Peters by dedicating the naming of the basketball court. This process got started, and I want to go ahead and give out a couple of thanks here as we get through the introductions, and then we'll get right into the speakers in the program. Really by Ellis Hagewood, headmaster at MUS, Tro Gillespie, board of trustee member, and an alumni advocate, and the Peters family, especially, and let me see if I can get this, Mr. Hagewood, is it alliteration here? All right, Jeff, Judd, John, and Jason Peters. I'll tell you, they were instrumental in this process. I want to thank them personally for being incredibly supportive and incredibly patient during what at times probably was a pretty anxious process over the last 4 months. I want to thank Tro, number one, for coming over and asking me to chair this event. I think it threw Tro off a little bit when he asked me, because I said, yes, of course, I'll do whatever I can before he finished his sentence. So he was left for another 30 minutes talking to me about why this is such a great thing to do. And then finally, Ellis Hagewood, who motivated us to get this done before he retires. June 16th, I believe, is the date. And this just would not be the same without you, Ellis. So thank you. With that, I want to introduce our first speaker. It's Coach Bubba Luckett from Christian Brothers High School. Coach Luckett has a long and storied history with Coach Peters. He was a player at Christian Brothers, competed against Coach Peters in the 1970s, thereabout, and subsequently became assistant coach and teacher in 1983, I believe, and head men's varsity basketball coach in '91. So with that, Coach Luckett.
Thank you, Jim, and Peters family and Mr. Hagewood for giving me an opportunity to speak about Coach Peters. I'm limited in time, but there's a few things I want to say. First of all, you're probably wondering, why is this guy from the other side of the track speaking at such a special occasion for a legendary MUS coach? Well, it's because of the way I feel about Coach Peters. And, you know, I think Christian Brothers is a good school because MUS is here. And I'd like to believe that the guys over here at MUS believe they're better because we're over there on the other side of the tracks. We make each other better. But I wanted to say a few things about Coach Peters that wasn't necessarily from the MUS walls, and just to kind of show you what kind of man he was in terms of being a teacher beyond the MUS campus here. First of all, as a player in high school, there are two people that I felt, or two situations where I felt handcuffed. Both of the individuals are in this gym tonight. Matt Bakke, when he defended me in high school, was no fun whatsoever. And any time that we played an MUS team, I felt like that legendary 1-3-1 zone that he liked to play. I always felt like there were two guys on me the whole time. I never enjoyed playing against a Jerry Peters coached MUS team. And I bet you if you ask anybody in Memphis that grew up playing against his teams, they would tell you we hated playing against MUS. We always stunk it up. And that's a real tribute to him. But, you know, when I walk through the doors out here, and certainly in the summer when I go in the back, the original gym back there in the back, breathing the air in this facility, smelling this facility, says Jerry Peters. And I mean that in a respectful way. I could be blindfolded, I think, and be dropped in this gym, and the first thing I would think about was Coach Peters. I want to tell you a quick story about what he did for me. My first year coaching, I was lucky enough to have some really good players. We won 25 games, and I'm thinking I'm a real hotshot coach. I remember thinking, oh, this is easy. I know I'm doing the right thing. Well, halfway through my second year, we're 4-14. I am miserable. I'm not having any fun at all. So I'm going to scout one night, and just so happens that Coach Peters is scouting a common opponent. And I go up into the bleachers and sit next to him. And my body language as I walked up there must have said how miserable I was, because I looked like a loser, I'm sure, the way I felt about my team that year. I sat down next to him, and he said, "How you doing?" And I said, "Not too good." He said, "Why?" I said, "Have you seen our record? We're 4-14. And he looked at me and he said, "Go to practice tomorrow like you're champions. Act like you're a champion. Act like you're Dean Smith or Mike Krzyzewski. Your players will start acting like they're better." And he was telling me all this, so I dropped my pen as we were watching this common opponent play, and he was talking to me as he was watching the game. So if you were any way across the way from us, you probably saw me looking at him and him watching the game. I was focused on what he had to say. Well, I was down to the last resort trying to turn this thing around. And I told him, I said, "You got to be kidding. I'm supposed to go to practice tomorrow and act like we're really good?" He said, "Do it, but make sure it's not in an arrogant way." I said, "Okay, I'm going to try that." As I mentioned, we were 4-14. We finished the season 17-18 and missed a tip-in at the buzzer at Hamilton to go to the state tournament. And to this day, it was the best coaching job I have ever done, and it was because of Coach Peters. He had influence on a CBHS basketball year and never knew it. The other thing that I wanted to mention is how I enjoyed competing against his teams and the relationship that we had. Somewhere along the way, I'm going to bring a team over to MUS, and this is going to be off the floor, and they're going to see what it says underneath. And a player is going to say to me or ask me, "Coach, who is this Jerry Peters guy?" And what I'm going to say is the best high school basketball coach Memphis has ever had. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Coach Luckett, for providing that unique perspective that we were going to be missing otherwise without your kind words. Now, my privilege to introduce somebody that needs no introduction. Headmaster Ellis Hagewood is going to impart some words for us.
You know, for me, Coach Peters has always epitomized the ideal teacher and coach in an independent school for boys. Tough, but fair in the classroom, demanding on the playing fields, and unyielding in his efforts to make boys do right. Punctuality, attention to detail, responsibility, preparation, unselfishness, patience, focus, perseverance, discipline, organization. He set the very highest standards for himself, and he did things right for 52 years at MUS. Most of those 5 decades, he was a full-time teacher who exhibited for all of us the proper balance between athletics and academics. Coach Peters supported the entire mission of MUS: college preparation, academic excellence, cultivation of service and leadership, and the development of well-rounded young men of strong moral character. For most of us, he's one of a handful of people who have come to define the MUS experience. The ineffable spirit and ethos that permeates this place. One of a handful in the pantheon of great leaders since the beginning of the school. Friedrich Nietzsche, in his book, Natural History of Morals, wrote, "The essential thing in heaven and earth is that there should be a long obedience in the same direction. There thereby results, and has always resulted in the long run, something which has made life worth living." And according to Jack Holscher, a longtime friend and classmate of his at Snowden, Central High Schools, Southwestern College, Jerry told him, according to Jack, during their sophomore year at Southwestern, "I'm going to be a teacher and basketball coach at a prep school." Well, he did. And he stayed. Turned down a number of offers from colleges. His life, long obedience in the same direction, resulting in a life worth living, not only for him, but for a lot of us as well. Now, he always enjoyed the utmost respect and admiration of his colleagues on the faculty and his fellow coaches in the community and across the state, because in all he did, he defined excellence, sportsmanship, and honor. Throughout the years, he built a tradition of excellence in every area of the school in which he had responsibility, but he was always the consummate team player. The school was always first. We all know that as he was packing for the 2017 state basketball tournament, he suffered a stroke and as a result missed the only 3 games in his basketball coaching career as the team went on to win the state championship without him. And when asked if the players were motivated to win it for him, he replied, quote, "They won it for the school," end quote. And I remember a private conversation I had with Jerry about whether he would return to MUS the following year at the helm of the varsity basketball team for the next season. So I asked him, "Coach, how important," and he was very close, "how important is the 1,000 win mark for you?" And he said without hesitation, "I think it's important for the school. I think it's important for the school." He enjoys the admiration and respect, appreciation of all alumni. When Jerry and Ruth lost their home to a fire a few years ago, I was inundated with alumni who called the school to ask how they could help. And they contributed money to a special fund. They brought food. They sent notes of encouragement and love. And now, today, I look around this room and it's former players and alumni and friends who've made it possible to dedicate this basketball court to him. The depth of love for him is manifest in the outpouring of financial commitments to name the court and to endow a fund that will make it possible for the sons of teachers in the future to be able to attend MUS. No one, past or present, in my opinion, has made a greater impact on the hearts, the minds, and the character of more alumni than Jerry Peters. I've always been impressed by the length of his career at MUS, 52 years, and the depth of excellence in all he did. But to give you an idea of the breadth of his work, consider these facts. At various times here, he taught 7th grade mathematics, physical education, U.S. government and history, world area studies, upper school American government, Russian history, Russian government, advanced placement and regular 12th grade American government, advanced placement and regular 12th grade comparative government, and recent American history. As an assistant principal for 14 years, he produced the master schedule of classes, counseled students, created individual student schedules, and oversaw the disciplinary efforts in the upper school, and a lot of you guys remember that. Over the years in the athletic arena, he coached lower school football and basketball his first few years, founded and then served as head coach of the track and cross country teams for nearly 2 decades, served briefly as athletic director, and of course, coached varsity basketball from 1964 to 2012, his teams achieving a remarkable 1,000 wins. General Douglas MacArthur once wrote, quote, "On these fields or courts of friendly strife are sown the seeds that on other fields and other days will bear the fruits of victory," end quote. Now, many of you in this room understand those words because of lessons learned, victories won, and virtues taught and annealed in the crucible of Todd Snowden Gymnasium or Roslyn Arena or on the track and the hills around Hull Dobbs Athletic Field under the unrelenting hand of Jerry Peters. He taught the virtue of fundamentals, hard work, planning, accountability, and sacrifice for the team. To paraphrase the words of Psalm 66, "For you, Coach, tested us. You refined us like silver. You laid burdens on our backs. We went through fire and water, but you brought us to a place of abundance." You know, he wasn't just interested, as Bubba suggested, in his own team. He provided opportunities for all the Memphis and Shelby County schools to participate and compete in first-class events. He created the Summer Basketball Classic, which is now called the Jerry Peters Summer Classic. He brought public and private schools, city and county schools together for 3 days on 4 basketball courts. Don't forget the lower school gym. That's the 4th one. He founded and directed the East Memphis Classic track meet, the Memphis Classic cross country meet, and the Rossland basketball tournament. He was the permanent chairman of the Tennessee Prep Schools basketball tournament while it lasted, and the East Memphis basketball tournament. And during his career here at MUS, he garnered a number of very prestigious awards: the Distinguished Teaching Award, the John M. Nail Outstanding Teaching Award, the Gene Barbie Hale Service Award, and he was the first teacher to hold the A. Robert Bolte Jr. Chair of Excellence in Teaching. Outside the school, he was recognized by the Tennessee Association of Independent Schools with the Hubert Smothers Award for Distinguished Teaching, and he was inducted into the TSSAA Hall of Fame, the Rhodes College Hall of Fame, and just recently, the Memphis Amateur Sports Hall of Fame. David Wilson, who's here tonight, head coach now at Emory and Henry College, said that he took his young son to meet Coach Peters last year. And David said, as I was standing to leave, he grabbed my arm and said, quote, "Never forget you are a builder of men," end quote. A builder of men. No phrase better captures the life and career of Jerry Peters, a builder of men. And I'll say on a personal note, no one encouraged and supported me over the years that I've been at MUS more than Coach Peters. He gave me opportunities to learn, to serve, and to lead. To me, he is a mentor, friend, and example of integrity. As Alexander Pope wrote of his friend Joseph Addison, I can say of Jerry Peters, quote, "In action faithful and in honor clear, who broke no promise, served no private end, who gained no title, and who lost no friend, ennobled by himself, by all approved and praised," end quote. Jerry, thank you for allowing us to honor you today. And if I ask you, how important is it to you that we name this basketball court for you? I think you would say it's important for the school. It's important for the school.
As is typical when you follow Ellis Hagewood in speaking, my words will be inadequate. So I am privileged to be able to say I'm going to transition all of you to the video monitor. We, Temple Brown, class of 1981, MUS alum, created and directed a video that was produced for Coach Peters' retirement in 2012. It was about a 45-minute video or so. We've cut that down to hopefully some excerpts that will be meaningful to many or all of you. And with that, let's go ahead and go to the video.
I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
I came out here one day and talked to Colonel Lynn. Apparently he hired me. He was in a hurry because he was going to get married that afternoon. So I don't know if he remembers hiring me or not.
It was to be a place that he could go and teach a couple of years. And then we'd go on to either law school or some sort of graduate work, and then decide after that where we wanted to be. The basketball job became available, and I've been here ever since.
He was not someone who was a coach who, in addition, taught a few classes. He was a teacher who also happened to be a very successful basketball coach and track coach.
When I was playing for him, I thought of him and John Wooden in the same context.
The sustained success that all of his teams had, to me, means far more than how many state championships a school earned.
Coach Peters understood that most games were won before the opening tip-off rather than after.
Our hallmark was doing well against teams that were actually more talented than we were.
One thing that has stuck with me is the essence of sports is execution under pressure.
Some years he had a bunch of short people, some years he had good athletes, and he was able to create a system for each of those different types of teams, and it helped them win lots of games.
Our clumsiest player in the 10th grade was Tom Verdeja, who couldn't jump over a bench or a Coke case and almost not over a painted line on the floor. So we started working with him on the painted line.
So he was very concerned about attention to detail and doing those details exactly right.
He approaches coaching, I would say, like a classroom. He's a magnificent teacher. I'd say he's a teacher of the game.
He was always reading books, always watching other teams, trying to learn, because he knew we can all get better.
One of my favorite things he said to me was, if I can't count on you to do the little things, then how am I going to count on you to do
the big things.
He would show us how to put on our uniforms. And he would go through and have one player stand up and show all the team in what order you're supposed to put on the jersey and the shorts and everything.
He had a rule that you had to go home, you had to shower after practice, and you had to wear a hat. You had to cover your head before you went home. And so Scott and I left practice one day without doing that.
Mom answered the phone and said, Coach Peters is telling you, it's time to come back. You got to come back up. And I said, for what? And she said, you didn't take a shower. Never left without taking a shower again, though.
Scott and David were starters of the team, and no one was better than the rules.
We became bigger than a bunch of individuals. We became a team.
Coach Peters used to talk about mental toughness, and when he wanted to demonstrate that point, we did something called the potty drill.
This was excruciating, and he would always say, we're going to do it for 2 minutes or 3 minutes. And he had his stopwatch, as he always did, and when clearly the time stated had passed and people were complaining, he would always say, well, we're going to do a little bit of extra, as he would say. And if someone continued to complain, he would always say, quit your bitching.
We had a snow day. Jerry would get in his car and go down Poplar down to McLean, where we had some guys live, and he wouldn't leave Poplar, but he said, all you guys can get to Poplar, and I'm picking you all up. So he'd come down Poplar and stop wherever the closest intersection was with your street and pick us up. And we'd go to practice, but I swear I don't know how we got home.
But at the end of the day, it was all about fundamentals and basics and values. He had a very simple concept, and he was a very strong proponent of a great work ethic.
Despite all of Jerry's demands and his do's and his don'ts, it took.
It's like in life, if you find something you love doing, then it's not really work.
They say a train is no good without its tracks, and one small glitch in the system and the train is derailed. My mother's been that set of tracks for my dad. She's always been his biggest fan and still is.
Since 1960, I have missed 2 basketball games, and I was not happy about that at all.
The state championship game in 2007. I remember that game because I wasn't there.
It was evident that he had a stroke, and we're all trying to get him to go to the hospital. And the bus was getting ready to leave in about 2 hours.
And Coach Bakke and I just sat down with him in the locker room and said, we're sorry, but you're not going to be able to go. We need to take you to the hospital. And we all cried.
He had installed all the schemes that we were executing. It was just a matter of us continuing to do what he had put in place. And so Coach Bakke and I kept looking at each other saying, we can't screw this up. Don't screw this up.
Before the last game, the state game, I talked to him on the phone, and I said, any words of advice to the guys? He said, it's time to play.
My son John would call on the phone at the end of each quarter and tell us what was going on. And it was a big thrill to get that final call saying that we'd won the championship.
We could hear them in the background of the telephone yelling, Jerry, Jerry, Jerry.
And the 2007 Division II TSSAA state champions, Memphis University School.
The best measure of a coach is what they do when I'm not there to tell them what to do. And I think that was a perfect example of that.
I remember the remark Matt Bakke made, which was, we didn't win the games or the championship for him. We won the championship because of him.
The assistant coaches and the players are able to go function at the biggest event of the year without, their leader's guidance. I think that said more about Coach Peters than if he was there almost.
And we got a telephone call, can you roll him in his wheelchair downstairs? I said, well, of course. The bus pulled up.
They came up to the lobby and met me down there and presented me with the championship trophy.
That was a real life Hoosiers kind of moment. I mean, you don't see that very often.
It was just a big season coming to a climax.
One of my greatest thrills of knowing Coach Peters was when we were in Carbondale at a tournament, and I knew I had arrived as a parent on his squad when he allowed me to be the one that washed the socks and the jocks. And that was huge for him to allow me to do that. So, because he taught them how to dress properly, how to shower properly, all those things. And I knew it was an awesome responsibility I had been given that night in the hotel that we were all staying in.
As you know, to win 20 games in a basketball season is really a big accomplishment. That's always a good year. And to do it, have to do it for 50 years to get 1,000 wins is just unbelievable.
I mean, there was a guy sitting next to me that had driven nonstop from Lexington, Virginia, and planned to be there till they won.
It was about what they learned about success in life. That's what he taught all of us. That's why we all came back.
With 1,000 wins, he has 1,000 lessons that he's taught all of us, you know, and those are going to last a lot more than the wins.
I've said many times, MUS is really a school for a lifetime. And if MUS is a school for a lifetime, you're a coach for a lifetime.
Coach, you lived a good life, and you have influenced hundreds and hundreds of boys in the right way so that today they're good men.
Nobody's indispensable. I said, that's true, Coach, but some people are irreplaceable, and you're one of them.
Every day I can hear you in what I say to the young men I'm in charge of in my program.
I would say I love you. Thank you for being a great father, a great husband, coach, teacher, mentor.
I don't know that he knows that we feel the way we do in terms of looking to him as a role model just for how we behave, how we do things, how we raise our children. We just don't talk a whole lot about that. We generally talk about basketball.
We never once thought we didn't have everything that we needed in life, and they were just tremendous parents, and I would just say thanks.
And he wanted us to go to MUS and have this experience, and so he made some sacrifices for us, and that's hard to put in words how much that means to us.
Coach Peters took on stress and took on, sleepless nights and took on the hard work of meticulous preparation for us, and it just meant so much. I mean, there's nothing more than you want as a growing adult, as a kid trying to grow up, than to have somebody pour themselves into you like that.
So I was his greatest fan all these years, his very greatest fan, and I wouldn't take anything for the long ride.
My teaching and my coaching have pretty much consumed my time. I have my faith, I have my family, and then I have my work. That pretty much consumes me.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them blue for me and you, and I say to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, bright sunny days, dark sacred nights, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see friends shaking hands, say, how do you do? They really say, I love you. I see babies turn out, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I say to myself, what a wonderful
incredible tribute. And Coach Peters, I'd say that your bucket's pretty full. Bucket's pretty full. I got to tell you, some of the most fun, and I want to thank Coach Peters too for this, some of the most fun we've had during this campaign over the last 4 months, at least for me personally, and I think I can speak for the steering committee, who's been absolutely phenomenal, is reconnecting with your former players and students, Coach. Some of the stories, getting to rehash them. My average time on the phone was probably 20 to 30 minutes because people felt like it was important. You were important. You provided tools, leadership across the board, and people were truly touched. And you heard words like, this is long overdue. It's well deserved. And what you never hear in fundraising, which I heard a lot, was thank you for doing this for Coach. He deserves it. You just never hear it in fundraising. Coach Peters, after many conversations with former players and students and testimonials, describing you as a servant leader is appropriate. Your dedication and service to the school has been nothing short of remarkable. At the highest level, you taught us and showed us how to, quote unquote, do things right, something we heard a lot already. There were consequences for not doing so, on and off the court. On the court, if you're not prepared, you're going to lose the game. Off the court, there are much more serious and greater consequences. Consistent with the comments from those in the video, Coach Peters' guiding principles have been deeply instilled in all of us. Discipline, preparation, consistency, teamwork, organization, and respect were all core tenets and staples. Coach Peters was and remains a role model. His discipline is notorious. He used to wait, I remember being amazed at this. He woke up every morning at 4:30 in the morning, and I asked him why sometime. He said, I can be productive when nobody else is. His preparation was exemplary, from washing players' uniforms before each game to his legendary, meticulous pregame scouting reports. His organization was impeccable, and he was a data guy before data was cool. He kept stats on everything, starting with MUS basketball camp and the daily recaps, all the way to the season stats, handwritten, of the MUS varsity program. He knew where everybody stood. On the sidelines, Coach always seemed to be in control. A function of the preparation, I expect. And no matter how intense the game or situation, he had this eerie calm about him because he was ready for the moment. Coach managed games with a confident, measured approach. And everybody had their roles. I don't know how many times that came up. Roll, roll, roll. It's a team, roll. Coach Peters coached, the players played, and Ruth managed the officials. Playing for Coach Peters was a little like the experience my grandfather had at a family meal with my grandmother when I was a teenager. It was a very short conversation, but I think it encapsulates what the players went through. After dinner, sitting around on the couch, my grandmother leans over and says, Charlie, put your coat on. Grandfather's kind of taken aback, says, why? Am I cold or am I going somewhere? Like my grandmother, Coach Peters always had a plan. He was certainly in control and regularly made us wait for the next instruction on what our role would be. Coach Peters had this unique talent of handling teaching moments with a straight poker face without letting you know whether he was serious or being sarcastically funny. Paul Gillespie shared a story with me that I'll recount here. During practice one day, Paul remembers Coach Peters telling Tread Thompson, who was a defensive specialist, that he was no longer allowed to shoot in games. Tread was taken aback, and Paul thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. Laughing uncontrollably, Coach Peters silently waited, disrupting practice, Paul was. And he said, "Paul, what's so funny?" Paul couldn't answer him. He's laughing too hard. Coach Peters said, "Paul, do you think it was funny when you got your ass knocked down in football?" The smile quickly left Paul's face, and it was back to practice. One of my favorite memories, which is something that was well beyond MUS days, was about 18 years after graduation. You probably all remember the Grizzlies made their first playoff debut in 2003. It was a great game early on. A player by the name of Jason Williams was on that team, AKA J. Will. He was on fire at the beginning of this game. You may remember this game, Coach. I hope you do. And Hubie Brown was the coach. And Hubie was notorious and meticulous about his substitution patterns. Jason had hit his first 5 or 6 shots. I remember thinking, man, this guy's, he's absolutely on fire. He comes out in the normal rotation, and he comes back in the second quarter, and he's moping around, and he's pouting, and he's basically just being a poor sport and a punk. And I'm sitting in the stands going, how in the world are his teammates dealing with this? So comes to halftime, and the players are walking by, and I happened to be at the ropes when Jason Williams walked by. And I kind of conjured up my inner Jerry Peters, and I let him know that I thought he might be in a position to put out a little more effort. And Jay Will didn't take too kindly to that. I thought that was the end of the story. A few days later, and I didn't hear from him often, I had a voicemail on my work phone. It was from Coach Peters. I'd love to do my imitation, but I'm going to hold off for now. And Coach Peters said, "Jim, this is Coach Peters." Long pause, like the long pause thing. He just kept, "I heard you had a little conversation with Jason Williams the other day at the game. I just wanted to say I'm proud of you. Here's for calling an asshole an asshole." I sat back. I kept that voicemail forever, by the way, until we changed phone systems. And I said, the ultimate seal of approval from Jerry Peters. I had it. This is an uncomfortable transition after using that last phrase, by the way. Now on to you, Ruth. Sorry. Or Mrs. Coach, as you're often referred. Today is about celebrating you and Coach Peters and your collective legacy here at MUS. Being married to a coach, any coach, is demanding and oftentimes underappreciated. Let me assure you that is not the case here. Your dedication to the school is best represented by the fact that you could never be labeled with one job title or role. You are everything from the student tutor to the superfan. Throughout the years, your positivity and support have been infectious. You are the living definition of the perfect teammate. As one former player mentioned to me, and I'm going to quote him, he's anonymous, quote, "I owed a lot to Coach Peters, but even more to Mrs. Peters. She knew I was struggling academically, and she personally took it upon herself to tutor me several hours per week my junior and senior year to get me through high school. Without her, I wouldn't have made it through MUS." Everybody had a role. Coach Peters coached, the players played, and Ruth managed everything else. Coach and Mrs. Coach, this campaign is a tribute to all you have both done for MUS. At this time, I'd love for the representatives of the Peters family to come up and unveil the court. Yeah, y'all walk that way if you can. All right, here we go. The Ruth and Jerry Peters Court. So if you can't tell, this was a surprise to Ruth. I'm going to give them a little chance to soak this in for a second. I'm going to make a few more remarks real quick, and let the Peters have their time. Special thanks go out to the steering committee who I mentioned before, whose names are listed in your program. Since February, these gentlemen have been committed to making this campaign a success through their leadership and their fundraising. Mission accomplished. Thank you to all the donors and all the people who have traveled from a ways away to come here today for your generosity and participation. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Perry Dement and his staff. They are truly, truly exceptional. Since the campaign launched 4 months ago, we have raised a total of $605,000 in honor of Coach Peters from a total of over 200 donors. The donors are recognized on the temporary plaque you see back here on the wall of the gym, which will be moved to the more permanent location once the lobby renovations are complete. MUS will use the money raised to establish an endowment in Coach Peters' name and to make improvements to the gym lobby, telling the history of MUS sports and Coach Peters' legacy therein. Coach and Ms. Peters, your legacy will not only be etched permanently in the MUS court and in the future gym lobby, but also implicitly on the diplomas of those students who benefit from the financial aid provided by the endowment of the Jerry Peters Faculty Scholarship Fund. Congratulations.
Well, yes, this was a total. Y'all don't catch me off guard very often. The mother of 4 boys is usually ready for anything, but this caught me. So thank you so much. He asked me to say a couple of things to you, and a lot of it will be anticlimactic after what we have seen here. But I will do what he asked me to do. And he was very tactful about it. He said, well, you do it because I talk too slow. I said, Jerry, you always talk slow. Well, I don't talk loud anymore. What he really meant was, you're the loud mouth, so you do it. There's really not much left to say except to say thank you from our family. When Tro and Ellis came to talk to us about this idea, we were, of course, so overcome and flattered that they would be willing to go to this extent, not realizing to what great extent it really would lead. When Coach interviewed with Ross Lynn and was offered the job, and Ross said he was sorry he had to cut the interviews short because he was getting ready to get married. But he said, here, I'm going to leave you the contract, and you take it home, think it over. We want you to join us, and we'll help you work on your master's, and we'll let you do a little coaching too, and we'll give you a summer job to earn money then. But here's your 9-month contract. Take it home, and if you want to join us, sign it. So he brought it home. And I said, wow, that's great. $3,600 for 9 months. That's a great contract. 1960 it was. But he came here, and that August, we celebrated our 3rd wedding anniversary. the beginning of his career at MUS and the birth of our first son, Jeff. So he taught and he coached, and a couple of years later, the birth of our second son, Judd. And so he stayed, to borrow a line from someone. He stayed, and then we came to varsity coach track, varsity coach basketball, then a third son, John, and we stayed. And then we had this young whippersnapper come to join the faculty. He was kind of funny looking, had great big glasses and short hair. He was going to teach in the English department after we'd been here 9 years. I think you all know Ellis. He's cleaned up real well. We had great, he said to tell you he had great coaches help him. Some of you saw them on the film, Coach Bakke, Coach Wise, Coach Ruffin, all of them. For a while, Gene Thorne convinced Jerry, Coach, to be his assistant headmaster and help in the administrative end. And as long as Gene was there, Jerry did it. But the minute Gene retired, he went back to what he really liked to do, and that was coach. And then we had another son, 4 sons. Well, he stayed. So we've got all these great memories. They're in my head. They're in his head. And of course, you basketball boys know what this is. The state championship necklace that you gave me, and I still wear it every day. He was not wanting to quit working, but he said one time he got a little hint that it might be close to time. He was in chapel, and Clay Smythe had said, Coach, my homeroom rows are filled up. Could one of my boys sit by you in your row of your homeroom? He said, sure. Come on over here, son. This little boy sits down. He said, son, what's your name? Wonderlick. Is your granddaddy Kent Wonderlick? Yes, sir. Well, when you end up coaching grandchildren of your own students, you think maybe it's time to hit the road. We get hundreds, he has gotten hundreds of letters from boys, men now. Not all of them are athletes. These are a lot of classmates, but this one is a typical one. And I'm going to read you one line from it. And I think, well, the joke that was in this letter I shouldn't share with you, but Henry Cannon, I forgive you for throwing up in my car on the way home from the basketball game in Nashville that year. Gordon Greason reminded me that you threw up in the back seat when I was driving y'all home from the tournament, and the only thing we had to clean up the mess was Coach Peters' pajamas that were in the back seat. So we cleaned it up and stopped at the first trash barrel and threw your pajamas out. So that was the end of that. But the one line he wrote, and I think we must have heard hundreds of his boys send this same in. Most of the guys that played for you will say the same thing. I'm a better man for having had you as my coach. I learned so much more than just good basketball. I learned the life lessons of tenacity, preparation, competitiveness, fairness, and tough love, the gifts that you gave me. And like riffles on the pond, Gordon says, I wonder if you really know how widespread your touching all our lives has meant to us long after we've left MUS. All I can say is thank you to Tro, Sammy, I know you're here, Ellis, Jim, all of you for this wonderful honor. And you want to say anything?
What a gathering. It just means so much to have y'all here. We've got not only people from MUS, but people from other schools. And that really says a lot to me. That we affected others, not only our people. What MUS players are like to me can be summed up in one story. A few years ago, we were playing for the right to go to the state tournament. And we got fouled. Louis Amagliani got fouled. He had 3 shots. One of them would make his would make his tied to go to the state. And he made that shot. If he made the 3rd shot, if he made the 2nd shot, this would put us in the state tournament. And he made that. And if he made the 3rd shot, it would put us in the state tournament and knock Christian Brothers out. A team that had beaten us twice before during the regular season. Of course, Louis made this shot, the 3rd shot that sent us to the state. To me, it was something that was expected. If you knew Louis, you knew he was going to make that shot. And he made the 3rd shot that put us in the state tournament. That's the kind of guy that we're dealing with at MUS. It was just a good feeling. So the last thing I want to say is when Louis went to the line for the third shot, we would all say, "Go Owls! Go Owls!" That was a big victory for us. Thank you.
Okay. With a little bit of sore throat, I think that was a good effort. All I know is that one thing that I can say that I'm not ashamed to say to this group, I'm the only one old enough in this room to have seen every single one of you boys play every single game or run every single track meet that you ever participated in. And I was the loudest person there too, and I don't mind it at all. Y'all, thank you for everything.